It begins quietly, not with a storm, not with a sudden pain, but in the corner of your eye, a flicker, a reflection, a tiredness that didn't used to be there, a grey strand that no longer hides, a smile that once felt like youth, now feels like memory. You tell yourself it's nothing. You keep going. You function. You laugh. You work. You plan. But somewhere inside, something starts to shift, to crack. Something you can't see, but it weighs. It's not the fear of dying. It's something else. Something deeper, darker. The fear of losing your lifetime, of having lived without ever truly living, of having forgotten yourself in appointments, in deadlines, in duties and distractions. What is it we fear when we grow older? Is it the body changing? Or is it the quiet knowing that the time we had was never truly ours? Today, we won't fight this fear. We'll face it. We'll listen. Because maybe, just maybe, life begins the moment you realize you almost missed it. You wake up every morning. Another day. Another calendar entry. An alarm that doesn't care how you feel. You function. Because everyone does. You work. You rush. You worry. For your family. For your bills. For a tomorrow that never quite arrives. Year after year passes. And suddenly, you're sitting there. 40, 50, 60. And you ask yourself, where did it all go? Your life, your fire, your possibilities. Most people spend their best years working in jobs they don't love, often underpaid, under pressure, with shoulders weighed down by responsibility. Seneca, the old Stoic, once said, "It is not that we have too little time, but that we waste too much of it." But what if you never even knew you were wasting it? What if, from the very beginning, you were thrown into a system that told you how to live? Heidegger called it the thrownness of existence. We are cast into a life we did not choose, trapped in structures we barely understand. And only later, perhaps too late, do we begin to ask, was that truly my life? The fear of growing older is not the fear of grey hair or death. It is the fear that the years you had were never really yours, that you existed but never truly lived. And that is where the trembling begins, not out there, but in you. When we are young, we wear masks, carefully painted, with dreams, with roles, with hope. What do you want to be when you grow up? As a child, it's an open question. As an adult, it's a burden. Because you have already become, but no longer know how or why. You've worked, you've fought, you've endured, for security, for status, for others. And then, as the years pass, the masks begin to fall. Not because you want them to, but because you no longer have the strength to hold them up. Kierkegaard spoke of the fear of being oneself, because when the outer roles disappear, what remains is your bare self. And that is terrifying. Because what if you don't know who that is? What if beneath the mask, there's nothing? Age strips away more than your face. It lays bare your life, Schopenhauer once said that aging is the painful letting go of illusion. You realize that many of your dreams were only reflections, images planted in you by a world that never knew who you were. And what remains then? A person, with scars, with longing, with the questions, was that it? Was it enough? Am I still me? You try to escape it, the emptiness, the truth, the fear, with distraction, with work, with consumption, with beauty. You train your body, count calories, smooth your skin with creams, you buy things, drown your ears in sound, scroll until the morning light. Because as long as you're busy, you're not old. Or are you? Erich Fromm called it the mode of having. We believe that to be young means to have much: strength, money, attractiveness, attention. But the more we have, the more we have to lose. Blaise Pascal said that the greatest fear of man is the fear of silence, because in silence you meet yourself. And there you find the truth, that no goal outside you can ever fill the hole within you. Some buy freedom, some buy distraction, but no one can buy time. And you feel it, deep inside, that you are running but not arriving. This is not panic, this is philosophy, this is truth. Growing older does not mean falling apart. It means beginning to see what you never needed, and what quietly you have always been. Years pass, people come and go, roles fade, and in the midst of it all, something begins to clear within you. What once drove you, success, status, possessions, begins to lose its glow. Not because it was wrong, but because it no longer reaches you. You begin to feel that a quiet life may be more honest than a loud one, that fewer words may carry more truth. That closeness doesn't live in talking, but in a glance, in shared silence, in simply being there. Seneca wrote, "As long as you live, learn to live." But what does it mean, to live? Perhaps it means no longer justifying yourself, no longer rushing endlessly, no longer letting others decide who you are. Perhaps it means making peace with yourself, with your mistakes, with your regrets, with what was and what never became. Carl Gustav Jung saw the second half of life as a different path, not to build more, but to deepen, not to fight, but to understand. But the more we have, the more we have to lose. Blaise Pascal said that the greatest fear of man is the fear of silence, because in silence you meet yourself. Because you now know that time is not a given, but a gift, offered again and again, each day. You do not need to change everything. You only need to be present, honest, awake, and gently turn toward life. Meister Eckhart once said, "The soul must become empty so that God can fill it entirely with His truth." Emptiness, not as lack, but as space. A space where you no longer must, but may. And then, in the midst of this new stillness, a different thought begins to stir. If life is so precious, then why am I not living it the way I truly wish to? What if I stopped merely understanding and finally began to change? What if now is the moment to leap? There is a moment, quieter than fear, stronger than hope, a moment made of light, yet hidden deep in the shadows of your habits. It is the moment you can no longer go back. Because you know the old life was safe, but no longer yours. You sit in the office, the cursor blinking before you, and suddenly you think, why am I here? What am I trading my time, my heart, my uniqueness for? Or you see someone on a park bench, someone you've looked at 100 times, but never spoken to. Never said what you feel, because you thought there would be time. But the time we imagine is always someday. And someday is where dreams quietly decay. Søren Kierkegaard called it the leap, an existential step into the unknown, not calculated, not guaranteed, but deeply human. A yes to yourself, and a no to all the borrowed voices in your head. The leap doesn't happen in the mind, it happens in the heart, in courage, in the decision to stop waiting until you're perfect, ready, safe, because you never will be. Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, not as a cold ideal, but as the one who dares to create himself, instead of being shaped by the world around him. The Übermensch doesn't rise from lofty heights. He begins where you dare to leave the job that has numbed your soul, and finally, do what makes you feel alive. He begins where you look the woman you love in the eyes, and finally, say what you feel, even if it leaves you vulnerable. He begins where you stop rushing through life and feel the tiny hand of your child holding yours. Not forever, but for this one moment. Martin Buber said, "Life takes place not in ideas, but in encounter, in presence, in the quiet truth between two human beings. In the moment you are no longer performing, but simply here." Simone Weil called this kind of attention a prayer, not in words, but in pure, awakened being. And what if this was the beginning of everything? No more running, no more delaying, but now to see, to feel, to act. So what can you do? You can begin today, even if your knees are shaking, the conversation you've avoided for years. You can choose today to take the first step towards a new life, not because you know everything, but because you feel the old one no longer carries you. You can put your phone down and listen to your child as they tell you what they dreamed last night. You can hold your partner's hand, not out of routine, but because you realize that every shared year is a gift that will not last forever. This is not advice. This is not a promise. This is a call that echoes through your aging to awaken something new. Presence, truth, resolve. You are not too old. You were perhaps just absent for too long. Now is the time, not to dream, but to live. Your fear of growing older is not your enemy. It is your last honest friend. It knocks when you have forgotten yourself for too long. It whispers when you've been too loud in your distractions. And it tells you, your life is not over. It is waiting. The time you have is not lost. It begins the moment you stop running away from yourself. So do not fear aging. Fear instead a life lived without ever becoming yourself. Because once you see that, then perhaps for the very first time, you are young.